Alright, so today is going to be day 2 for intellectual and emotional practices. So, our last 2 videos talked about books and information. So, reading to expand the intellectual base is a great thing to do. It's very useful. It's nourishing for the intellect to think outside the parameters of the walls that have been given to you. I mean, a lot of people feel safe within those parameters, but expansion is definitely necessary for evolution. So, sorry. Yes, so today I wanted to talk about my emotional outlets because the emotional space for me has not been a place that was very stable or that was very accepted or fluid in the family that I grew up in. And several relationships since then has been very challenging to my expression of emotion. So, my go-to, ever since I was young, I like to write. I like to write a lot of poetry. I like to just get my feelings out onto paper. And then as I reread those things, it gives me space to process events and feelings that I may have otherwise shoved down into that painful place of the ego and denial, the shadow. So that's a really good way for me to be able to kind of like, I don't know, the way that I kind of like feel it and the way like my kids talk to me about it is it's a lot of verbal diarrhea. So like when you're sick, your body just pushes that shit out. And it's the same way when you are fighting with that really raw emotional state. If you can just purge it and get it out onto paper where it can, exist in a realm that's not confined to your inner space, because that can make you very conflicted and it can be very hurtful to who you are as an individual if you are literally using your energy to combat this space of pain. We don't really want to do that. We don't want to put our effort into, not having to feel this emotion right now. I would rather get it up and out and then clean up the mess at my leisure. So that's kind of, the short version of that. And some of my writing is just for me, and I don't share that with anybody. And some of my writing is personal, but it's shared with a few people, and some of my writing is like for everybody. But that's stuff that really affects me. I really, really, really get picky about who is able to see that part of me, because my emotions have been used against me so often that I do not like to share who and what I actually am with other people, because it pulls me out of my safety and security of who I am, and it like has this built-in vulnerability to it, which I find exhausting and triggering and all the things. So I try to avoid that as much as possible. which may be a shortcoming to some people. But we all have to have boundaries, and that's one of mine, is that unless you can be trusted to respect who I am as a human being, you don't have access to my inner thoughts and my inner world. Um, so that's that. Um, so writing can be vastly therapeutic, and it doesn't have to necessarily be like poetry, but if you just want to do like journaling or things like that, that kind of get you. I mean, I showed you my moon diaries. Um, so in my journals, where I would like scribble all the things that were going on and how I was feeling, and different patterns that we each have. Um, it can be very, very helpful to look back at that stuff and be like, oh, well, this happens around this time, and it's you don't have to base it on anything but you. I mean, I like looking at the moon cycle because that's really cool. Even the seasonal cycles. Um, a lot of us can get like seasonal depression is a thing. But that's a pattern that some of us have. And others of us like don't have that pattern. Some of us get it more in the winter because we're shut in the house. Me, I thrive so much during the winter. I am in love with snow. Um, as a matter of fact, I have like 8 pairs of snowflake earrings right here on my table. But I love snow. I am a crazy human when it comes to snow. It just makes me feel alive. I love it. I live in Vermont. There's a snowflake museum up here, which I frequent a lot. And I have bought myself a lot of the snowflakes. I have like a zipper pull for my jacket that's a snowflake. I have necklace that's snowflakes, earrings that's snowflakes, pins that are snowflakes. I have a bumper sticker that's snowflakes. I love snow. So for me, that like lights me up. So for me, like the hard thing is like, excuse me, the fall and the spring. Um, Up here, that's known as like stick season, because all there are is sticks. There's no snow, there's no leaves yet. It's pretty bad. And then the spring is mud season because all the snow melts, and we have a lot of dirt roads up here, and it just makes a lot of mud everywhere. And usually we have like isolated flooding, so a lot of the fields around will get flooded and turn into little mud bogs and fun stuff like that. But yeah, so everybody deals with those different seasons like different ways, and different things can affect each one of us, and none of us are built the same. um, that's just a fact of life. um, but we each have like those things that help us to thrive, and being able to get my emotional trauma, my emotional baggage out of here and onto a physical surface, whether that's typing in my computer or writing in my books. No matter what that looks like, um, it can definitely help speed up that process because you're not rethinking the same thing over and over and over and over and over. That's a struggle for me for sure. That replay button. At one point, I thought that sucker was broke. um, replaying like that same event over and over and over, and trying to be like, well, what if I said this instead? Like, would it have made a difference? And like, you rerun these scenarios through your brain. Like, it was just, it's exhausting. it takes up so much bandwidth. It takes up so much like mental capacity, like that you're just dwelling on this stuff that's it's not going to change anything. Like the past is the past, it happened, you can't go back. Like I don't have a time machine. Um and even if I did, would I really want to waste, you know what I mean? I mean, I watched The Butterfly Effect. That was that was enough. You don't screw with stuff. Um but just accept it and say, you know what, it worked out that way for a reason. Like I don't need to know why. It's, you know, it's the universe doing the universe's thing. So I'm here for the ride. Let's see what's next. Um, so that's kind of like the point where you want to get to. Like, okay, like we can't go back and we can't like slingshot forward. So like we're here. Like what is going on here that we can fix now? Now. The Power of Now. It's a really good book. Um, I mentioned it in the last video as well. So if you haven't read The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, I suggest you grab a copy and read it or watch some of his videos, because there's probably something in his realm of teaching that maybe will help you with something in your life. Um, I know when I get reminded of those things, it's it's usually a couple times before it like really sinks in. I take it as like if I hear it like 3 times, then I know like that's like the Trinity. I kind of like I function in that realm of threes. Um, so for me, when it was brought up like repeatedly to read that book that I had already bought because I was kind of like inspired to buy it, and it was just sitting there on my shelf because I was reading a different book. Um, and then, like within just a couple days, it was talked about, um, brought up in conversations, or I was watching a video that somebody else brought it up, and I was like, oh, damn, I actually bought that book. I should freaking read it. And so I pulled it off my shelf and I read it in about, I think it took me like 2 weeks. Um, to read it, and it was really good, and I wanted to read it again when I was done, but then I got inspired to read the next one, which was also brought up to me in conversation, because I was reading The Power of Now on my breaks at work, and people were like, oh my gosh, that's a really good book, have you read the second one? And I was like, there's a second one? And they were like, yeah, there's a second one. And actually one of my friends that lives down the street from me was up at my work when I was reading my book, and he's just like, I'm gonna bring you the second one so you can read it, because like you're going through that really fast. So um, and so I'm currently reading the second one, um, which is kind of cool. I like it. It's a really good perspective on things that I experience in my day-to-day life. And um, before I started reading The Power of Now, I started writing a book about this Adam and Eve process, about how to deal with like the ego, because I've been doing that with people for a while. And it's a lot of what he talks about. So it's like it was just kind of like confirmation to me, like, yeah, like this happens, and like these are the reasons why it happens, and these are some of the things that you can do to kind of like get over that and circumvent that. And so it's helpful for me to get an additional perspective on that, because I like switching perspectives and looking at things in different ways. And sometimes the depth of understanding is very helpful if you have a case where you're dealing with somebody that has a particular problem or a particularly deep stem to some of like that ego reaction and those patterns that are like learned behaviors. So for me, that was I don't know, it was just a really, really good thing. Like the timing was good, the information is amazing, and I enjoy like incorporating that into my work. Um, but yes, writing is definitely one of those things that I will say do it, do it, do it, do it, do it, do it. Even if you just want to write down, today sucks, these were the issues I had, and I don't know what I'm going to do about it yet, but, we got to start somewhere. That's a step. That's a step. You know what I mean? Like, yay! First steps, you know what I mean? Um, we aren't born with, like, all the answers, you know? I mean, we're born with all the tools, but maybe not all the skill to use those tools. So, when you start taking your first steps as a baby, like it's very exciting for your parents because you're like, yeah, this is like one of those milestones. Well, when your actions change, no matter how small of a change, it's that same thing. It's a milestone. You have changed. Something has changed. This is amazing. Like, change, it can be a long process, especially if you get to that point where it starts to feel like uncomfortable, like I have this notebook and I have my pen and I'm here and I don't know what to write because I'm not a writer. I don't know what to do with this because this is not my normal. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, so the fact that you can take this turmoil that's interior to you in your shadow or in your emotional space or in your mental space or in your even in your spiritual space, and you take this and you're pulling it outside of your five aspects of self, you're taking it out and putting it on paper. That's going to allow you space in here to heal. It might be a little bit of a foreign concept, that baggage that you can't even see, those frustrations that you have, those kind of like friction that you have internally can take up so much space that it doesn't give you room to heal. I found that out. I found that out the hard way by experiencing that. So I have a stack of notebooks like next to my bed because I'm maybe a little bit crazy, a little bit like unbalanced, whatever you say. Like, I'm an air sign, I guess I'm allowed. Um, so for me, like, writing is like almost, it's like the pressure release valve on like a pressure cooker. If those things aren't allowed to release enough pressure to stay one steady constant and it gets too much, they literally explode. Um, so if you don't want to explode, release the pressure, um, which is great. It's writing is so great. Even if you don't know where to start, just start with the thing that's bothering you the most. Start with your itinerary for the day. Start with, today I am trying to release this attachment to emotional pressure or emotional trauma or emotional responses or emotional reactions. Just start with where you are. I've been feeling exhausted lately. I have no motivation. Like, whatever it is, um, just get a piece of this, a piece of this weight that's on you internally, and just get it onto paper, because that paper is going to hold that for you. And I don't care if it's like a 2-ounce note, I don't care if it's a 50-pound note, I don't care how much emotion you pour onto that page, the page is going to hold it. And you don't have to deal with it right now. and you go on about your day and you function. Because that's what we need to do in this 3D reality, right? So, this is where I'm going to leave this one. So, exercise your intellect, exercise your thinking space, and clean it and free it and do that spring cleaning and dusting and get all that stuff that shouldn't be in there and get it all out onto paper and let it breathe for a while. Come back to it when you have more space, when you're more equipped to deal with that stuff. And I'm going to leave this one here. All right, guys. I hope everybody's amazing. Write some stuff. Figure yourself out. Don't give up. Don't give up. Don't give up. Start small. Okay? Love you guys. Bye.